Let's do it.
Sure, let's do it.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, well, welcome to the webinar today. So we're going to be speaking about how to attract diverse talent. We're really excited to have everyone involved. And following on from the success of the first webinar, we're really happy to see that some people came back, and we've also got some new people joining too. So this is part one of a 3-part webcast on diversity and inclusion. So this is going to be an open discussion that we're going to have, and we really encourage everyone to get involved and ask any questions in the Zoom chat if you have any. So before we go through the agenda and everything for the webinar, I thought it would be good to let my co-hosts introduce themselves. So should we start with Elin?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Elin Oberg-Martinsson, and I'm the CEO of Tengai, the world's first unbiased social interview robot for recruitment. I have 17 years from the recruitment industry, and prior to my role here, I was the Chief Innovation Officer at a very progressive recruitment agency in Sweden called the Next Generation, or perhaps better known as TNG in Sweden. So that's all for me. I have a huge passion for diversity and the unbiased part of the recruitment process.
Perfect. Thanks. And Luke?
Morning, everyone. I'm Luke. I am the COO of an organization called Bain Recruitment, and we also have a careers platform called diversifying.io. Similarly to Ellen, 20 plus years, I say 20 plus years now, I've been told once you get past 20, don't do 22, 23, 24. So 20 plus years in recruitment and talent, big mix of agencies, global organizations, and the organization I'm a part of now, we believe that there should be fair and equal career opportunities for everyone. And I play a part in that in helping to use my knowledge and my experience to help try and drive that change.
Perfect. Thanks, Luke. And Samantha?
Oh no, where's Samantha's mic? I did that on purpose.
I work as an international client consultant at Team Taylor, which is a Swedish HR tech scale-up. A lot of people ask me what we do after the first webinar. So what we do is that we provide companies that want to enhance their employer branding, improve their applicant journey and recruiters' experience with the scalable and intuitive employer branding platform. ATS. And my role is to advise clients on these matters, as well as on how to use employer branding to support a diverse recruitment strategy. And my perspective is basically that of someone who's got a background as part of the minority groups and being neurodiverse.
Perfect. And I'm Leah, so I also work at Team Taylor, and Sam very well just explained what that is, so I'm not going to go over it as well. I previously worked with our international clients too. I now work within our marketing and our content team, being part of both minority and neurodiverse groups as well. Can't even speak. No, I'm really excited to be co-hosting this webinar and to be able to discuss how to attract diverse talent. If this is going to be anything like the last webinar that we had, I think a lot of people will have questions, so please feel free to ask questions in the Zoom chat. We will dedicate around 10 to 15 minutes at the end to answer any questions that you guys have. So if you wonder why we're not answering the questions during the call, that would be why. And we will also be giving out a little surprise gift to the top 3 best questions, which will be decided after the webinar as well. So yes, we encourage you to ask a lot of questions.
Yeah, we had so much fun the last time answering all those really good questions, and felt so good for everyone, for me at least, to see that everyone was so engaged. So fire away with the questions.
Yes.
Yeah, and questions related to the subject of the webinar. You're not allowed to ask questions to Elin about her hair routine, about my skincare routine, about where Luke got his turtleneck. Not getting extra points.
Oh God, I'll vote for those questions. No, but we are really curious to see how you guys are all working as well. So what we're going to be doing is starting off with a poll. I think everyone will have gotten the email regarding the Mentimeter poll that we have. I'm going to share my screen now so everyone can get involved though, and there will be a QR code as well. But this is going to be completely anonymous, so please answer these questions honestly, because we're really curious to see how you guys are working. Give me 1 second to get up the poll. Almost done. Sorry, guys.
It always seems longer than the reality when you're doing it.
I know.
So it's not actually that long. It's only a few seconds, but when you're doing it, it feels like it's an hour.
Thought I found it perfectly. Okay, one moment. Sam, you should have been the host after all.
Well.
Okay, here we go. I make this full screen. There we go. Okay, so this is the QR code. So either type in the code here, or if you just take out your camera and just put it up against this here, then it will take you directly to the poll. I'm on full screen now, so Sam, if you can let me know if...
Yes, you're on full screen. So you just need to go to www.menti.com and use the code that you see on your screen.
Yeah. And if you guys want to let us know in the Zoom chat if you are in, we can see here that there are quite a few people involved. So if anyone has any trouble, just let us know.
We can see the little hearts, people showing some love.
Nice.
Sweet.
It's really sweet.
Just give that a minute. Again, it's completely anonymous, so don't be shy.
Theresa cannot get in. Are you using the app, Theresa, or are you going on menti.com?
To anyone, if anyone's having trouble or if they think they need to download the app or anything, what you can actually do is you can just go onto your phone camera and literally put it up against the QR code. It will scan, and then the website will pop up on the top of your screen. You gotta love technology. So we've got 112 people involved. People are still joining.
Brilliant.
Perfect. And then Leah is going to start once we know that most people are in at least.
Yeah.
So start the poll. So that's what you will see once you're in.
Right. Is everyone getting it okay?
I think we're good.
Yeah, I think we're good too. All right, so we will start with the poll now. So still be Korean. Right, so, it looks like people have already asked the question. So, does your company have programs in place to attract diverse talent? So we'll just wait for everyone to answer this. Almost all done. It's interesting to see that the majority
Moved in real time.
Sorry. What do you say, Sam?
No, I like to see how it moves in real time as
Okay.
people are answering.
Okay. No, interesting to see. Thank you for answering honestly as well. Diversity at your workplace. If you let us know if you how much you disagree or disagree regarding these topics when it comes to diversity at your workplace.
Oh, slowly moving backward, guys. I think we're gonna move to the next question.
Almost everyone's answered. That's super interesting to see. Also, the answer to
people are taking a bit of time to answer those questions, like, are we diverse?
If you have to think about it, you're probably not. Okay,
Right.
next
Good.
one. Again, let us know how much you agree or disagree. If your workplace diversity is important to you when applying for a new job, if you often worry about not being a good fit for the company culture, and if you've considered quitting a job due to not feeling included. Whoop. Right. Okay, I'll move on to the next one now. Is your company using technology and relying on data to diversify the recruitment?
That's an interesting one.
Definitely.
I think that's everyone then. Okay, perfect. So as mentioned, if there are any questions that you have throughout the rest of the call, just put them on Zoom. Another thing I did forget to mention: this entire thing is being recorded, so anyone that wants to watch this afterwards is able to do so. But no, thank you for sharing that. It was really interesting for us to be able to see that, and thank you for answering honestly as well. But I think if we jump straight into the call then, so we are going to be talking about how to attract diverse talent. But just to go over it, what diversity is. I think a lot of people immediately when they hear diversity, they think, okay, whether it's race or if it's gender, but it's so much more than that. And this is something that Sam and I actually speak about quite a lot, quite regularly as well. If you want to jump into that a bit more.
Yeah, but as you say, it's not just gender, it's not just race or nationalities, it's also parenting, it's also neurodiversity, which is a bit of a touchy subject as well that people don't really know about and all that. And I think, Luke, as well, you had a very good input on that during our last call.
Yeah, I think as much as different countries have different legislation where certain characteristics are protected, clearly diversity is difference, and it's embracing the difference and creating environments and cultures where everybody can belong, whatever your background is, whatever your race, ethnicity, age, sexuality, etc., etc. And I think definitely over the last year or so, rightly, there's been a focus on some parts of diversity, but I think there's a risk sometimes that people's plans are focused just on one or two bits of diversity rather than thinking more inclusively around what are all the bits of different bits of diversity that we should be or could be thinking about.
And not only that, I mean, diversity can also be diversity of thoughts, diversity of opinions, of views, and sort of just connecting with people that are not really similar to ourselves, basically.
People from different backgrounds, economical backgrounds as well, diversity in terms of when you're recruiting people tend to go for the profiles that look very much like their own people who went to the same schools, when you have these questions of referrals at jobs, for instance. But at the end of the day, you're going to miss plenty of great profiles because they don't have the same socioeconomic background than yours, or the same educational background than yours as well. So that's another thing that people tend to miss out on as well.
Yeah, they tend to gravitate towards what they know and what they're similar to. So where do you think that companies can start then? So, I think they would start with defining what diversity means to them at a company level.
I think so, yeah. I mean, it's a lot of the work that we do is when organizations are putting their hand up for the first time and saying, okay, great, we need some help, or we need some external help to think about this. And I think often people are at that point trying to think about what's our diversity statement, or how can I go and hire some people that don't look like us? And I think, to your point, Leah, spending some time on actually what does diversity mean to us? what are the things that we what's our dominant culture, what's the dominant groups that we have, actually who should we be thinking about, of the kind of skills we normally hire, how available is that talent base, but also think about where are we in the world. And I think had some very unusual conversations with people where maybe there's not a huge amount of diversity in that location or in that city, and they're trying to go and find diversity, and it's like, well, I don't really think that's the intention. It's about creating an environment where everybody can belong and you're not excluding people. That doesn't mean that you need to start flying people from different countries or different locations just so that you all look different on your website or your careers page.
Yeah, no, I think that's a big problem, because a lot of people, we touched upon this on the last call as well. A lot of people do genuinely want to have a more diverse environment, but there are a lot of people that are doing it for show, and are thinking like, okay, we have the token, this person, that person, this and this, whatever. So it's a matter of really sort of confronting your own view on it and understanding, okay, this is something that we need to do regardless, but we want to do it, and we want to do it for the right reasons. How can we do it? And then how can we do it effectively?
I think to be practical about it, you need to look into your institution, like Luke said. What do you have? What are your current resources when it comes to every type of diversity? I mean, and what are you trying to do? So you need to define your objectives, and you need to define your values. What are they? Don't fake it till you make it, because it's going to crash. Try to do something that sticks with the identity of your company. Don't feel like you're forced to hire more Black people or more autistic people because it looks good on paper. Do with what is actually working for you, with the resources you have and what the actual culture of your company is. So if it's easier for you to recruit more women, try there already. And if it's easier for you to recruit more expats, try there as well. Don't try to go crazy rainbow when you don't have the means for it, when you don't have your leadership on board, when you don't have your colleagues on board as well. And that's something that is super important. Define where you want to go and how you're going to communicate that. I think that's where you should start.
Yeah.
I think that one is to it's super hard to know where to start with your diversity work, and especially when it comes to recruitment. How do we recruit diverse talent? I always advise my clients to make sure that they focus on skills and nothing else. If you focus on skills and what skill sets you have in your organization and what skill sets you are looking for to require, then you can sort of select your process. You can attract those skills, and diversity doesn't become an issue because it sort of comes as a result of your focus on the skill sets, basically.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point. And I think it's something that, particularly now that I've immersed myself and do this type of work full time, is that I still think when we're hiring and we're trying to attract, we're still thinking about where somebody worked. Have they worked in a similar job title before? And I think we're narrowing down massively the type of people that we can consider. Whereas what we should be doing is thinking, how can we create a recruitment process or an attraction mechanism that brings people in that have the capability to do the job? It's not just they've got the badges or got the job titles or have worked in the similar companies to ours. And I think once you start to free yourself of some of that kind of subjective, I call it badge collecting, I think then you can start to, as you say, and make really sensible, fair, robust hiring decisions or hiring selection criteria, which gives everybody a fair chance rather than just those that have had the most opportunities.
And I think that one of the most important things as well is to look yourself in the mirror. How diverse are we? How do we see on what opinions do we have on diversity for our organization, and then act accordingly. I think most people, as you said, put up like great pictures up on their adverts telling that they have a diverse workforce, but the reality is when they're then doing their selection, they're recruiting people that are similar or that resemble themselves. So that makes the sort of outcome of it not being diverse. So walk the talk, basically.
Yeah. I think that it definitely starts with having that conversation with yourself. And like you said, looking yourself in the mirror and thinking, okay, what sort of things, what biases do I have? And then it also goes to, okay, then creating internal awareness within an organization, involving both management and also employees. I think it should definitely start with management, just sort of leading by example. But what do you think that people can do to engage and involve people in this matter, and to almost make it a normal that this is something that should be taken into consideration when hiring?
think the point Sam made earlier around when you link it back to the values and goals of the organization and you make it part of your normal day to day. You know, we are a business that embraces ideas and innovation, and we like that diversity of thought. I think once you start there, that this is genuinely good for all of us, and it's not the feature of we're doing this because we have to, or we're doing this because the world has changed. For me, really, if you can take it right back to kind of getting everybody on board and bringing people on the journey, and that's the thing that I think is really hard, and we see it a lot all the time, is where people in a desire to move quickly, which is great, they're not bringing people through on the journey. So all that ends up happening is you're bringing in, you know, new ways of attracting candidates. You're getting more and more candidates that are different into your recruitment process, but ultimately those hiring decisions and those hiring outcomes are always the same that they're going to be anyway, just because you've got human beings who've still got the subjectivity of, I like people with this type of background or this type of skills and experience. And I always think back to my first team, you know, first management role I had when I built my own team, and we were small to begin with, only 2 or 3, and the first couple of hires I made were probably people that were like me, and then they referred their friends, and then they referred their friends' friends. Before you knew it, I was in really big trouble because I had a team that were all similar age, similar degrees. We were all the same person, and it made me realize really early that actually, unless you're really intentional about this stuff and actually kind of hold yourselves account, like who do I know who knows my bias that can actually safety check me, because I do need to safety check myself as well as the processes and everything else. I think that's the starting point. I think getting people on board with, let's commit to this and let's commit to it together.
And I think also getting people on board on the purpose of doing it, sort of put light on the effects of having a diverse workforce. I think that many companies that I meet also has the opinion of, well, we do like to recruit people that resemble ourselves. We want to be a homogenic team because that's how we work. We are, I remember we talked about this last time, but we are ninjas, or we are this or that. That's the in-group thing. And that's how we create belonging. So sort of put that into the attraction point and into the selection point as well. So I think it's super important to highlight why this is good, why it's good for our companies, why it's good for line, why it's good for profitability, why it's good for everyone.
Sorry, you were lagging there for a bit.
Oh,
I'm back. No, now you're back. Now you're back. I don't know if it was just lagging more for me.
I think it's all it, but I think that's important. I think it's important.
Like everyone's sitting really still now.
We're all in here. We're all here. Don't worry. But I think that's an important point. Though. It's like getting that alignment first, because you know, one of the big reasons I started to do this was that after many years of being in recruitment talent, I couldn't understand with all of this effort, this focus, this money, this attention that's been in some organizations for a really, really long time, that it hasn't really had an impact. And I think the problem is that unless you're getting the hearts and minds bit right, it doesn't matter what you do from an attraction point of view, your careers page, etc., it genuinely won't make any difference. I think that's the thing that keeps me awake at night, is that, you know, companies, organizations think, well, hang on, we've got a D&I team, we've got this focus, we've trained our recruiters, but unless you've got the hiring managers on board, the people who ultimately are going to press the button around, do we hire this person or not, unless they're on board and have a level of understanding and are educated to a degree on how to do this and do it without bias, it's not going to make any difference whatsoever.
Yeah, there has to be a very genuine level going into it, because it's so easy to see through when companies are just doing things for the sake of doing them, or to be able to say like, oh, we do this and we do that. So I completely agree. I think it's really important to have everyone on the same page with that.
I think once everybody's like, when you realize, okay, I can do this now, I think a lot of people want to hear today is where they're going to start. And I think to be practical about it, let's start giving them some examples. The first thing for a recruiter, when they know they have to start hiring people, they're going to start thinking about, you know, posting a job, having the diversity kind of traction showcased on their career site. So via employer branding, but also on the job ad. So Luke or Elin, do you want to start giving a bit of input when it comes to employer branding and communication, what recruiters could actually be doing?
And I think that one thing that we mostly do wrong when we create our job adverts is that we sort of think that it should be just a sales pitch. So we sort of put everything that we want in there, not so, and yeah, the ninja part, or the super excited sales rep, we need this and that, and it's all extroverted words, right? So we need to think about how and put ourselves into the candidate's shoes. what would different candidates apply for? If we want to attract a diverse workforce, how can we use the tonality, the voice, the language, and how can we use different wording, and how does it look for the candidate when they apply, and act accordingly to that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you've got to be authentic with how you're describing the advert, like, completely don't oversell it, but at the same time be intentional. And I think there's definitely a danger, and I was definitely like this early in my career, that I'd write adverts that would appeal to me, but actually what you need to be thinking about is I'm writing adverts that appeal to all sorts of different people that I would like to apply. And that for me is often thinking really deeply about, particularly when maybe you're looking for people outside the industry that you're in. What terminology am I using? Am I using words that are specific, say, to the country that I'm in? What if somebody has Swedish or English as a second language, for example? How can I make things more neutral, more relatable, more appealing to someone without overselling? But also at the same time, and I've heard this a lot, is that people that are really, some organizations keen to go on a journey are being too authentic, and actually aren't really making enough of an effort to say, look, we are where we are today, and this is our culture, but we're trying to get to here, and they're still a bit scared about doing that. So if you are in an organization that is primarily one dominant culture, whether that's white or another culture, that you do then need to be quite upfront about that. Otherwise, people are going to do the little check around, okay, let me go and look at the leadership teams or whatever else. So try and remove fear from those adverts as well. And I think just put it out there, be honest, be real. Most people are on a journey with this stuff. So shine a light on who you are and what you're trying to do, and don't be afraid of it.
That's very true. I think a lot of the time when I speak with recruiters, they're telling me, oh, but we're doing a great job with our employer branding. And then as we start, discussing a little bit more, they realize that, oh, actually, no, we're not doing that great. And that's where it starts really with think about, we said that, like, put yourself in the candidate shoes, turn off the switch, the recruiter switch. We're all at a point in our career where we don't need to go and do the kind of job we're doing as students, young, fresh graduates when we were looking for jobs. We're often being referred or headhunted and such. So we have a bit of a different perspective, but try to put yourself in the shoes you were in 20 years ago, 15 years ago, 10 years ago and such, and try to understand what candidates would like to see. What would you like to see? And for diverse candidates, we're not a different species. We're human beings. What do we want to see? Well, we usually want to see people who look like us. That's where it starts. So if you're going to recruit diverse candidates and you have, whatever diversity you have defined in your company, try to showcase that. And if you don't have it, be honest, be real. That's it. Be transparent in your communication. Tell candidates you're trying to attract, if you don't have that diversity already in your company, hey, we're not doing that great in terms of diversity, but we're trying to change this. So we would like to have more women because women are the future, or we would like to have more diverse people, more foreigners, more this, more that. We are catering to physically disabled people as well. Please come in, LGBTQ, whatever. Be candid on your career site. And use the communication that works with your culture as well. Like, you're a corporate company, you don't need to go all startup-y and show a ping pong table, for instance, to attract people. Be very, very transparent, straightforward, honest, human. That's really where you should start. Because a lot of people feel panicky about, what am I going to do? I need to talk to the marketing team. No, just be a human being. You're talking to human beings. That's where you should start.
Yeah, and again, focus on skill sets. I think that's one of the, taking anything from me out of this session, it's focus on skills. And I think that's important when it comes to this as well, attracting diverse talents, because giving out your advert, let's say that you're looking for more women. If you're doing that, make sure that decision, or know that decision actually excludes half of the people being men, right? So there's still a little bit of a thing that's more important, and that's the skill, I think, better than sort of highlighting, yeah, we're looking for females, or we're looking for people from that country or with this language or whatever. Skills.
Yeah, don't make it like a cheap affirmative action kind of recruitment strategy. That's not really nice. Yeah. And you guys touched on something super important, the job ads. The way you're going to communicate what you're looking for through a job ad. I think recruiters need to think about that Eileen, you popped that out the other day, like guru, ninjas, and things like this.
Yeah.
And
My favorite adverts.
And you mentioned
Programming ninja.
yeah, for me, who's neurodiverse, like I'm autistic and I have ADHD. I have a short attention span. I need things that go straight to the core. I'm on the money. I don't have time for 3 pages of Bible, of you giving me all the skills you want me to have. Just be concise. And if you're using guru, I'm going to be thinking, are they looking for a man who's just going to lead a cult? Or ninja, I'm going to have to jump from a tree in my black spandex and just roll under your desk. What do you want me to do? So I'm just really confused. Stop it, strip it, go to the essential, straightforward, transparent communication again. And coded words, be very careful with that. Look,
the truth is, Samantha, that most adverts that are really good and that attracts a broad range of candidates, they're actually quite boring. That's the boring truth.
It's absolutely the truth. And I think I think there's too much focus. I think it's helpful, but there's been too much focus. Okay, great. Well, I've gender neutral now my advert. So great. I expect this flood of then candidates to come in, forgetting that actually, like, we're still looking for humans. Like, just say it as it is. Don't oversell it. Like, people that are looking for a job because they're proactively looking for a job will apply if you've made it clear to them and make it relatable. So I think part of it's getting back to basics. I think a lot of this stuff is really, really super important, but it is writing good adverts that are the right size, because that's the right bit of the process to have an advert. Things like the detailed job description that's 4 pages and stuff, that can come later. That doesn't need to be done at the advert stage. Do that after you've attracted the people.
So why do you think candidates choose not to apply then, even if they are qualified for the role?
So I'm always careful with answering a question like this, because obviously I'm a white middle-aged man, so I am from a dominant culture. However, the data that we see, and we have a couple of careers platforms, is that where you have the adverts with the really, really long shopping lists, where it's the list of things that you want, there is something that I describe as self-disqualification. And it was the thing that really drove me to do this full time, was thinking about, well, the hidden bit of data that we never get to see is that the people that have viewed your advert and then for whatever reason they choose not to apply. And we see time and time again where you've got the adverts that are the ninja type ones, or where it's the overly bravado years of experience and you must have this and you must have that. We see then that the diversity within the applications goes down significantly, versus the ones where it's based on skills. It's please, would love to hear from you if you have this skill or are capable of doing this. You then tend to find that you get really, really great variety. So that would be the big recommendation I would make, is just, just don't oversell, don't overdo it. Otherwise, candidates will self-disqualify.
Yeah.
Just to bounce onto this, the job ad and everything, I mentioned coded words. This is something we had discussed previously. I'm just going to give a concrete example for the people who are attending the webinar. If you're looking, for instance, to hire a sales rep, we know that sales is very male dominated. So when I mention coded words, I'm mentioning male coded words mostly. It's going to be strong, leader, this kind of words, like challenging. It doesn't mean that a woman can't be strong, a leader, and challenging. I'm a kickboxer. I will kick your ass. I'm not scared of a challenge. I'll get in there. I'll get the money dropping. But I'm a woman, and I know it's going to be very male dominated. Do I want this? I'm a caregiver as well, like most women are, and we know it. I'm going to feel like it's going to be hard competition because I'm a mom and I have to pick up my kids, set them off in the morning. All these things, they play. So if I see, I'm very conscious of that. If I see, for instance, understand, responsible, these are more female coded words. You know what I mean? Like empathy with your client. And I'm going to be more inclined to apply, although I would probably kick my male colleagues' ass, at performing, than I would be if I saw these words. So this is something you need to keep in mind. And for neurodiverse people, the length and the coded words like guru, ninja, use things are very simple, easy to read. That's an example.
Yeah, and I think particularly at the moment with this massive change we've had to how we're all living, and I've had this come up a lot in the last few weeks, that now that we're, a lot of us having to homeschool because the schools are closed in the UK, for example, like being really clear around, if you are able to provide flexibility, if you're able to have people work, different types of hours, etc., say that, shine it, like talk about what you've done to accommodate your existing employees. And I think these are the things that when people are trying to figure out, can I do this? Can I make this work with everything else that I've got in my life and my world? If you're clear and explicit about that, I think that will help reduce self-disqualification as well.
Yeah, and just making people feel comfortable before even applying, basically. So whether it's not using coded words or if it's, like you said, Luke, letting people know we do provide this, or we allow this, or we're flexible with this or whatnot. It will make people feel better about applying. And also with the, like you said, with the time that we're living in now, a lot of people have been fired, or a lot of people have lost a job, or maybe people are just, you know, applying for jobs anyway. It makes it that much more intimidating because obviously they're in a position where maybe they're not feeling as confident. So if they see these job ads where they're looking, like you said, maybe a woman is looking at a sales job ad, and then they see like, oh, we want someone who's strong in this and this and this. By all means, you can be, but if these are things that are going to make people, like you said, self-disqualify, it's definitely worth not doing that.
Absolutely.
To put it bluntly.
Yeah.
So how else have you guys seen that things have changed during the pandemic as well, you know, when it comes to diversity? Higher number of candidates, for example.
I think the move to remote working has had it's a factor, it's a dynamic. I think some people hoped and thought that maybe that would level the playing field. I don't think it has. I think it's just presented a different set of circumstances to accommodate. So I don't think it's necessarily had a negative impact. I don't think it's necessarily had a positive impact. We do, though, some of the coaching that we do is like trying to encourage organizations to be mindful of like, how is somebody applying for a job? Maybe they don't have a laptop, so can you apply via mobile, for example? Does your advert look as good on mobile as it does on a desktop? A lot of the organizations we work with love PDF downloadable documents, and I keep trying to say that 50% of all our applicants are don't have a desktop or aren't applying via desktop, so PDF on mobile doesn't work well. So I think those are things that people can think about. But I think really it's just, you know, be clear to people around what's changed and why it's changed and what your approach is at the moment. And I think I see a lot of historical job descriptions, and I think this is all job adverts. I think it's part of the problem, that people are reading out stuff that they were using 5-6 years ago, that they've iterated on, and it's got stuff like that coded language that you talk about that was maybe okay 7-8 years ago, definitely isn't okay after the year that we had. So I think being brave enough to maybe start again with some of this stuff. I think I've seen people that are kind of going, look, you know what, we're in a new world now. Let's just build everything. Let's build our adverts. Let's build our job description. Let's build our careers pages. It doesn't need to be loads of work, and you don't need to make it perfect from day one, but gosh, you can absolutely do some work on it to make it more relevant for now and more accommodating for now, I'd say. And that's what I've seen that people have done well, is those that realize this is a journey. You're not trying to get to a destination. Don't think you can launch your D&I page and that's it for the next couple of years. Like, this has to be stuff that you do every single day. And I think that's an easier place to start than trying to come up with this big bang moment.
Yeah, and I think that one thing when we see loads more of candidates in the processes at the moment, I think that we should be really afraid of being lazy on the diversity work, because we've seen these in the 90s. We've seen it when we had a lot of applicants, where we sort of start again cherry picking in our processes instead of doing it correctly, focusing on skills, doing it in a subjective way, etc. We have been doing that in many companies for the past years, but I think moving into a situation where we have a lot of applicants, many companies become lazy on the diversity work.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's a really good point. I think so organizations think that doing that well is that they're almost having like kind of intervention steps during the process. So first one is you run your adverts, and then let's look at, you know, if you've been able to measure it, let's look at the diversity of that attraction piece. And if it isn't diverse as you want it to be, then think about what proactive steps that you could take. Do you need to organize an event or whatever you might need to do? Great. Okay, the attraction bit is then move to the next stage, then the next stage. But almost it's that commitment to, we're not going to run too far with this. As you say, and get lazy around the diversity that we've got in there and just hire what we've always hired. It is that commitment bit. And I think when you commit to slowing down the process slightly, just to say, look, you know, we'll get the right person, but maybe we'll add an extra few weeks on getting the right person. And that means that we're going to be really fair to everybody by getting the diversity in at every stage, or at least measuring that every stage. I think that's a big benefit that you can do.
Yeah. Guys, I know we have a few things that we want to talk about, but I'm just looking at the time. I realized what time it was, and we have a lot of really great questions here. Do you guys want to jump into probably our favorite part of the webinar, which is answering the questions?
It is.
Perfect. All right, Sam, I think you have
so many questions. So I got questions through the chat and then through the Q&A part as well. So I'm like all over the place. You guys get right now. Okay, so where to start? There's so many. You should not give the chat and the questions to the autistic ADHD person in the room, but we'll make it work. All right, let's start with Becca Balin. As a recruiter, how should we use the data from an equal opportunities questionnaire, race, gender, sexuality, etc., when reviewing CVs?
So I think you shouldn't use it when you're reviewing CVs. It should be completely separate, but it should be used to review, have I had enough variety of CVs? So am I getting enough different people from different type of backgrounds? It shouldn't be used in any way, shape or form as part of a hiring decision process.
Yeah, but as you said, it's good for analyzing the data. I think we have enough.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Moving on, next question. So many questions, guys. I'm really trying to do my best. Don't hate on me if I'm not asking your question. We'll try to get back to this later. Regarding focusing on skills, what if for cultural/historical reasons, certain groups are less likely to have that skill? For instance, most computer engineers are men, which makes it difficult to achieve gender equality in tech.
Absolutely. Yeah, hugely. And I had this conversation far more than I care to. My background is as a tech recruiter originally. And I always refer back to things like the Stack Overflow survey that comes out every year. And it talks about job seeking behavior. And it's about 8-9% only of all engineers, software engineers, that are female before you look at any other type of diversity. So guess what? An advert, and I say this to people that are often trying to advertise on our job board, isn't going to fix that problem. So I think it's being braver, and it's to say, look, absolutely, you still should go and try and attract what diversity there is, but you need to think, I think about is like, what can you do to then increase the size of that talent pool? What internships can you run? What work experience can you do? How can you get people from different communities or different groups shadow your existing engineers? I think you have a responsibility to try and grow the talent pool because it isn't big enough. Otherwise, you're just stealing the few diverse candidates from each other, and that doesn't solve anything.
Yeah, and again, go back to looking at your diversity workforce. Can we create an environment for those candidates when they turn up to after their process in our organization that is inclusive? Otherwise, they will just move along to another company, and you have a really high retention on that.
All right, thank you. If you are looking for more women for diversity reasons, can men say that it is discrimination? It's a juicy question.
I would say that you shouldn't start there. You should start at the skill sets again, not focusing on, okay, we need more women. If you focus on skills, then diversity will come as a result. If you focus on creating an environment where women can feel comfortable in your organization, more women will apply because they can feel that, okay, this is somewhere where I can belong. So I would say that trying to recruit more women just for the purpose of women is to discriminate 50% of the population.
Yeah, this is, you've touched on my biggest fear here, and I see it a lot. I think recruiters are starting to add people's characteristics as a skill set, i.e. like I'm looking for women or I'm looking for people that are non-white. It is not a skill set. You have to look for the actual skills, the day-to-day skills that someone does in their job, not who they are as a human being. That is not okay, because you are then discriminating against.
Exactly. It's very much like tokenizing them as well. So like you said, if you're focusing on that person, what they're able to do, then as a result of that, you're going to have a more diverse group of people. And even if it's at the stage of the job ad as well, making sure that you're letting people know it doesn't matter who you are, what you look like, what you sound like, where you're from, doesn't matter. If you are able to do this job, apply for it, and then your skills will shine through. And I think that also starts with people, again, confronting themselves, their own sort of opinions that they have, and just completely rewiring themselves and understanding, okay, I need to stop focusing on the things I've focused on before, and then, it will end up being more diverse by default.
Yeah, I think unlearning is as hard as important as the learning that you're going to do in this topic, I think.
Yeah. Someone just said, you give an example with your statement, skills first. I don't know if you want to touch on that, Elin.
Sorry, I didn't hear the question.
No, someone asked, just a follow-up question. Alina asked, could you give an example for your statement, skills first? So just skills in general.
Yeah, skills. Well, let's say that you're looking for a sales rep. Then you want to know what qualities does that person need to have in order to perform in their role. So look at the things that has actually been beneficial for that person. It might be personality traits or soft skills, for example. if that's one of the skills that we need to focus on, because that's more important for the achievements of the role, then perhaps skip the acknowledgement and the sort of what kind of experience people have, and focus on skills instead, and soft skills. So it sort of depends on, you need to define the different skills that you're looking for. And it might be personality traits, it might be education or knowledge, it might be motivational skills, it might be, let's say, logical skills or economic skills or finance skills, whatever. You need to focus on and defining those areas and measure them accordingly.
Right.
Back at you, Sam.
More questions? I'm just like, I was going to bounce onto what Luke was saying, and then I just lost. Wait, because some of you have written a bit of a long text, and then you have the question, so I'm getting lost in there.
You've got the hardest job, Sam.
Yeah.
Not give me that job next time. Okay, so how do we get people to self-reflect before they start rewriting their job description to fix the issue? I think that a lot of people want to know how they can actually engage everyone, or even change themselves, their own behavior.
Just acknowledge it at first. Acknowledge that everyone, regardless of what they're doing, like, I don't think there's a single person that doesn't have some sort of bias. So just have that confrontational conversation with yourself. Okay, what have I done in the past to be a part of this problem? What am I not going to do moving forward to fix that? I think a lot of people put their ego in front of that and their pride, instead of just being like, okay, you know what? For example, I'm a woman of color. I am a woman, whatever, I'm neurodiverse, whatever, but there are still things that I've done to contribute to be part of the problem. But if you actually have it in you to say that, then that's where you stop, and then you can change it, in my opinion.
And I think that just moving like 10 or 15 years back in time, when I first started working with unbiased recruitment, my first sort of thought of that was, I don't have any bias. I'm totally bias free. The thing is that the more you know and the more awareness you have, the more you realize that you have bias in every single situation that you're in work, in your private life, at home, at wherever you are. Bias is in there, and most of it is unconscious.
Yeah, exactly. I think not enough people are willing to have that conversation with themselves, because then they have to change their behavior, which is hard, but
it is really hard.
It's really hard, but they just do it.
Yeah. So I think in terms of the practicals, we've seen a lot of organizations who do lunch and learns and things like that, or get guest speakers in. So people who have really been on a journey and have learned a lot. So it might be a prominent person in the industry that hasn't had many people of color, or of a different sexuality, and start to, what we find that storytelling is a good way. You start to see real human beings who've had real experiences. A lot of those have not been positive experiences, and start to show that to people who maybe think, I haven't got a problem, my intentions are good, I've never been racist in my life. You start to then make them realize that, kind of being passive about this stuff isn't anywhere near good enough. They have to start being proactive and have a role to play in it. And I think once that penny drops, then they start to go on a journey of learning and starting to think more about themselves and their role in this.
Yeah, I think also having those open discussions with your colleagues as well, and admitting, because I think what a lot of people are doing now is that when they're openly admitting, okay, I've been part of the problem, or I've done this or that or whatever it is, then it encourages other people to do that as well and have that self-reflection too. So if there are, whether it's workshops or just group discussions in your organization where you can say, okay, this is a problem, doesn't matter who you are, where you're from, all of us have contributed to this. What can we collectively as a group do to change that? And I think it starts with one person saying it, and then other people feel comfortable saying it, because especially if it's a matter of, let's say, for example, race, which is something that people are very, very, very scared to talk about, understandably. If people are willing to say, whether or not I meant to do this, this is something that I've been part of the problem for, then other people feel they're able to say it without getting defensive and saying, oh, wait, I'm not racist, I haven't done this, I'm not sexist, I think just authenticity and being open and being, like you said, Ellen, being self-aware is really, really where that starts. And it should be encouraged. I think it should be encouraged a lot.
Yeah, I saw a good pop-up on the chat which said create safe spaces in your work environment. I think that's exactly it. Create safe spaces so that you can have this dialogue without fear of it being held against you. And I think that's the key thing here.
Yeah.
Build backlash,
You won't get promoted because you spoke up, or do you know what I mean? It's like, yeah.
Because you've been too outspoken. So another question, and I would love to chip in on that one. Do you have an example of companies that you feel are really good at diversity and inclusion, companies to be inspired by? So I'm going to name drop. But from what I've noticed, if you look at the US, for instance, I would like to look at companies that have a head of diversity and inclusion rather than a company that doesn't have one. These are people who are actually doing some work. They're not perfect, but they're getting there. Leadership is getting some stuff done. And I've seen these things coming in because diversity and inclusion is a bit more in fashion in Sweden. And slowly but surely, you're starting to have companies that are actually recruiting head or manager of diversity and inclusion. And you can really ask people who know what you could do in your institution. So that's an example. And I'll just let Eileen and Luke chip in now. That's my 2 cents.
Yeah, but I think that we can see really good examples from companies that have experienced a lack of candidates in their processes because they have been forced to sort of broaden their perspective on the recruitment process. And then naturally, the sort of outcome comes from moving into that, I think. So I think from companies that has been forced to look outside of Sweden, for example, to recruit, they have been very successful in the D&I work, I think.
Yeah, I think when we're trying to look and measure who's doing it well, I think everybody's on a journey, right? I think where you start to realize that no one's nailed this, everybody has significant work to do, and don't be too swayed by when you see the really great marketing efforts where companies are winning awards and it's being shouted about, etc. I think the better ones really who are just getting on with this and they made it part of their DNA, and it's not something they're feeling the need to shout about or celebrate. Clearly storytell if there's success and there's people you want to use as role models, but let's storytell rather than celebrate. And I think when you start to zone in on that tone, you'll get a better sense of organizations that are just showing what they're doing and it's great and it's on a journey, versus those that are celebrating the marketing efforts of it or how it looks or the optics of how it looks.
Yeah, and someone did ask here as well, or someone said that this is very difficult to do with smaller companies, which is completely understandable as well. And I think that touches upon what Luke said a lot earlier in the call. Just be honest about the situation that you're in. If you are a smaller company and you maybe you're 5-10 people, you're not going to have a head of diversity and inclusion, or maybe you do, but not necessarily. Then just make it very clear that you are open to having it, make people comfortable to apply for the positions, or just be very open. We want to attract these people. We want, this is what we're trying to do. This is where we see our company. This is what we're trying to achieve. And we want you to be a part of it. And we encourage you to apply. So that's what I would recommend for smaller.
Yeah, and especially the smaller, put the things in place now that are going to allow you to have that culture. Because guess what, when you get to 50, 60 employees, it's going to be really hard to undo it. So do start putting the stuff in place now. Yeah. It will pay off in the end.
Samantha?
Yes, I'm trying to go. Do you deliver short sessions internally to businesses? You guys? Yes, you do. So that one is answered.
Yes, and not just me. We have a very wide variety of different types of speakers with different types of backgrounds.
Yeah, same here.
The whole thing is scrolling down and I have to go back, to try to stop the scrolling. How has the political climate, for instance, BLM and other human rights movements, affected companies from a D&I standpoint?
It's made them have to face something that has been a problem for a very, very long time and finally talk about it.
Yeah. Thank you, Leah.
Just to put it very straightforward, I think it's such an unfortunate thing to have to happen in order for people to have a conversation. I think anyone would agree with me on that. But I remember specifically when the Black Lives Matter movement really blew up last year. I mean, it's been around for a really long time, but specifically with the incident that happened last year, you could notice people in the office, you could notice the way people were talking to each other, and people were like, okay, this isn't the elephant in the room that we can't talk about anymore. This needs to be spoken about. This needs to be something where we actually take it into consideration, because would it be easy for people to just continue going along as though nothing's happened? Sure, like it's been going for God knows how long, but it really, really made people have to have those discussions, those uncomfortable discussions for some, but those long overdue discussions for others.
Yeah, and I think that the focus on those areas from the boards or from the management teams that has actually, due to the political view, being forced to focus on that also contributes to sort of meeting within the company and combining those two aspects. Well,
that's a question that really lightened up the mood. Look at you all.
Sad. No, but I think it's
that question.
It did have that positive impact on organizations, but that also goes on to there are companies that were forced to have that conversation, and I think that's a really interesting thing to touch upon, because there are some people, I'm not going to put some people in a box, but there are certain people who focus more on, okay, well, this is going to benefit us from a marketing perspective. This is, we can take this opportunity and we can make more money, or we can get better talents because here's something that's come up where we can do this. Honestly, at that point, for me, I don't care what the reason is that you're trying to do this. The fact that the conversation is actually happening is really, really positive. And then that also trickles down to, okay, so it's not just people of color. It's also whether it's sexism, or if it's for people who are disabled or neurodiverse people or people who are religious, or it doesn't matter. It opened up a really, really good conversation, in my opinion. But I think even starting with the people that don't want to have that conversation, the people that were forced to have the conversation enough, you're actually going to start realizing that it's common sense and it should have been happening for a long time.
I think the biggest step change was that for once and for all, people, and mostly from the Black community, but from other communities too, said enough's enough. And actually, I think there was a process of things that had happened in organizations over the last 4 or 5 years, then were brought to the surface. So I think organizations were forced to confront a lot of stuff because people were saying, even internally, look, I've experienced a lot of stuff that isn't okay. And I am going to tell you about it now, because it can't be under the radar anymore. It can't be a scenario where I'm not treated the same as everybody else. And I think that was the fear around is just a moment. It's clearly not, because I think people are not letting that go now, and it's a case of organizations are being held to be account, leaders are being held to be account, people that came out with a big statement are being held to account, and I think that's the shift.
Yeah, and someone did mention that until something else comes along, becomes a hotter topic, then BLM will drop down the list of important things for boards. That might be the case, but the conversation started, and what I've seen is not only did it start there, the other conversations have started as well. So it's not just about race anymore. So sure, it might not be a hot topic, or in some people's opinion, it might be it might not be a hot topic anymore, but it's started that conversation. The conversation's still going. I think that people will keep that conversation alive, and it's also encouraged other people and given other people a voice to speak about other things without, people have realized how big of a deal it actually is making people feel included, regardless of where they're from, what they look like, what they sound like. It doesn't matter. And yeah, no, I think it's, sorry, I could ramble about this for hours and hours, but I'm just going to try and keep it short and to the point. It's opened the discussion for everyone.
Right. Let me see. Oh, in the sea of questions here, what do I have? Okay, there is a question regarding the job ad. Does there have to be a difference between a job description and an advert?
Yeah.
100% yes. Completely different, completely different things. Never confuse the two. Absolutely. Job description could be nice and long, can be detailed. Advert has to be shorter, sweeter, to the point. Don't try and merge the two. I would recommend having 2 separate documents.
Yeah.
Okay. There was someone who was actually asking a question for a recruitment firm, and let me find that question again. Oh, Lord, you guys have been very active. Thank you for that. It was basically, how do I get a client to accept to recruit a candidate from an oppressed group? So we say that this candidate is outstanding, but the client maybe is not super hot potato about recruiting that specific profile. What would you give?
I think this is one of the largest problems for agencies working with diversity hiring, because there's always a client, and the client's always right? So there's, I think, given that, it's even more important to work with awareness. Perhaps that's a client you shouldn't work with. To be honest, I mean, at some point, if you definitely wanna contribute and deliver competent and talented people, they should see skills first and nothing else. But again, it comes down to awareness again. I think it's trying to educate your clients on the benefits of diversity hiring.
It's really difficult. It's the thing that probably causes us the most angst day to day, because it's always that debate and dilemma around, lots of hiring managers aren't as open-minded as we'd like them to be, but are we able to, with the interaction, move them on from whatever their thinking is at the moment to how their thinking can be in the future? And it's difficult because there's some hiring decisions that you don't feel great about, and you wish could maybe you've influenced differently, but it's just, I think, unfortunately, a nature of it. But it goes back to, if you can nail the skills bit up front and hold the hiring managers to, well, you said to me you wanted this, this, and this right at the start, and we spent a lot of time in that. If you can keep going back to the skills, you can probably get past that sort of stuff. If it's just I'm not sure about them, or they didn't wow me, there's no X factor, that's because you haven't done the skills bit up front, which is difficult as an agency, because I know you're keen to get going and start sending CVs and show your value. I think the real skill with this is actually spending more time up front with the client to really get the skill bit right, and be a critical friend to them, be somebody that can challenge them on what they really want.
Next question. What's your view on companies specifying that they're looking for diversity and identifying a specific type of person they want? That's a tricky one.
Well, there's different legislation in different countries, and depending on your industry, and there are some instances where it is okay to do that to a degree, but I would urge everybody to check their own local industry and local legislation around that. Personally, my personal perspective is that I think it should be leveling the playing field and creating equal opportunities, and I think you can take that positive action and do it in different ways. So, for example, we often tell clients, if you're really not open to having a process where anybody can get the job, then don't advertise for it. I'm really sorry, you're gonna have to do something different. You're gonna go and have to organize an event, or you're gonna have to go and headhunt. You can't create a situation where you are only looking for somebody, you're using that gender or whatever it might be as a skill set, because it's not a skill set. So short answer, yes, wouldn't recommend it, but there are some instances where it's acceptable.
And last question for today, it's 12:08. You guys have been sticking around with us for quite some time now. Last question, what key principles would you apply to your employer brand to promote inclusion and diversity?
Authenticity.
Look at us.
I personally, I'd put it back to your values. I think whatever your five values are, that the D&I and inclusivity, I bet you sits in one of those, or at least two of those, maybe all of those. Just pin it back to that, and just, you're talking about yourself in the same way that you're talking about being inclusive. And I think that's when you've nailed it. When it's these separate bits here, there, and everywhere, they're bolt-ons. Talk about that a lot. It's not part of your DNA. It's something that you've added onto it. I think that would be the recommendation I would make, how to get it right. Might be harder to do that initially, but once you've done it, it's a lot easier.
Agreed. I think we had touched upon that as well at the beginning, but everybody was not there when we started the webinar. So tricky thing. All right, you guys, thank you so much for today. Again, a very touchy, very sensitive, but very on trend and very important topic. Thank you very much to all the attendees as well for joining in, for chipping in with wonderful questions. I'm sorry we didn't have time to go through everything. Don't worry, we'll pick out winners. We'll announce them on LinkedIn, and you'll get your vouchers.
So we will have a part 2 follow-up. So this is a 3-part. This is the part 1 of the 3-part. Wow, the chat is getting bombed right now with thank yous. That's good. There will be. So there was a 3-part webcast. This was part 1. So we're going to be having part 2. Oh, for the love of God, someone please say the date, because I've forgotten it from the top of my head now.
Well, the date.
There will be a part 2.
I think it's in February.
I think
18th of February, Natalie's saying 18th of February.
18th of Feb, thank you, Nat. On the 18th of Feb, we will be having part 2. So make sure to sign up for that one. We will also be putting updates and stuff on LinkedIn. But thank you so much to everyone for joining, for your questions, and for caring about this subject.
Thank you, everyone.
And thank you, everyone.